welcome back to another incredible edition of Beyond the Trailhead. We got a great guest with us this week, Grant Breidenbach with Bearvault, who is with the marketing and sales team. He's here just to talk a little bit about Bearvault, the history of Bearvault. Grant, thank you so much for being on, first of all.
Craig, thank you so much for the invitation. It's really a joy to be on the podcast today and have a chat.
Awesome. Well, I usually just go straight into it, Grant, instead of just, bantering around and stuff like that. I think that people love getting straight into the nitty gritty, but just wanted to first ask you to just kind of talk a little bit about Bearvault, maybe the history of the company, how long you've been on, how it was founded, and all that good stuff. So, without further ado, take it away.
Totally, that's awesome. So, for anyone who doesn't know Bearvault, we manufacture bear-resistant food containers for backpackers. If you unless you've been living under a rock, you're probably familiar with bear canisters. You may love them, you may hate them, but that's what we do, and we truly believe in seeing humans and wildlife have happy, healthy coexistence. We're a joyful brand that doesn't see bears as something that's scarier to be afraid of, but rather we approach it from the perspective of, hey, how can we employ solutions here so that while you're backpacking in a bear's home, you can properly respect that bear and take care of it. That bear lives a happy and healthy life, and your trip, goes well, and you're not walking out hungry.
Yeah.
So the company started. The idea for the company was kind of late 90s, really. So this
Okay.
company's got some legs. It started basically in the Sierra, where there was a ton of human bear conflict, and bears were getting into people's food all the time. Bears were being put down. Bears were getting aggressive. And there was basically a lot of back and forth between the National Park Service and a few individuals who are interested in creating solutions to keep bears out of folks' food in the backcountry. And the first
Okay.
canister that was on the market was not a Bearvault. It's one that I think many of us have seen. It's the black one with kind of the thicker plastic and the coin
Yeah.
top opening, and that's called the Garcia Backpackers Cache, which has
Okay.
been. I got nothing bad to say about it. I mean, it's indestructible. It's stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Um, but basically, the original founder of Bearvault in the very early 2000s was an avid backpacker, spent a lot of time in the Sierra, and said, "Look, this is great. I love the concept, but there's gotta be a better way to do this. This thing
Yeah.
is heavy. You can't see inside it. The opening's small. You can, barely fit your arm down inside. How can we make this more user friendly? Have a bit more human centered design baked into it, but
Yep.
also not compromise in the least on the bear resistance side of it, because that's what's most important, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the Bear Vault idea was born. And instead using a transparent polycarbonate, similar material along the lines of bulletproof glass. And the canister's taking a few different shapes and sizes over the years, generally becoming more robust, tougher. The bears tend to point out our flaws. We there is truly nothing that is bear proof. We do not advertise our products as bear proof. They
Yeah.
are highly bear resistant, and while people can backpack with total confidence in the product, we do get products back that have been chewed on by bears, and we warranty all wildlife damage. And we're able to learn from that and say, okay, well, this bear chewed on this way, it did some damage here. How can we continue to iterate the next evolution of the bear vault? Uh,
Yeah.
and that's really what it's looked like for the last 20 some years of the company as the different bear vault models have evolved. I joined the team in 2021. I was living out in Idaho at the time, and was looking for a bit of a career change, wanted to do something in the outdoor industry that also had a real mission behind it. I was
Yeah.
coming from the nonprofit sector, and I was working on proactively preventing homelessness as compared to
Hmm.
a reactive approach. And I didn't want to work for just any corporate company that was selling another product that folks didn't really need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the role of Bearvault jumped off the page to me because, sure, it's outdoor industry and outdoor gear, but there was this concept behind it of, hey, we want people to have less human bear conflict in the backcountry,
Yeah.
and we don't want to see bears euthanized. We value them as just critical members of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Um, so I applied, and the thing that I think might have set my resume apart for the crew is that I was actually planning a hike of the John Muir Trail that year,
Okay.
and so I interviewed and I told the kind folks at Bearvault, I said, "Hey, I'd love to join your team, but I've got this month-long JMT hike coming up. Can I push out the start date a little bit? I'm happy to grab some great photography for you and take a nicer camera
Yeah.
into the backcountry," and they were excited to get some content out of it and knew that I would definitely fit the mold for
Yeah.
a backpacker using the product. So I carried my BV500 through the JMT in 2021. And then it's been a great ride out here, and we're based just outside of Boulder, Colorado. If you're familiar with the area in
Yeah.
Louisville.
Okay. Wow. That's a cool kind of a ride, like going from product and even your journey just to coming to the so how was the JMT, by the way?
JMT's awesome. I would highly
Yeah.
recommend it to anyone. I think there are a few places in the lower 48 where you can get that contiguous of wilderness
Yeah.
that's uninterrupted by roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few places you can hike for a few days or a week and not cross any sort of road. It's really unique.
That's cool. I have it on my bucket list. I had a permit one time and then realized that I could use that permit for the JMT, but I just didn't have the chunk of time in there to
Totally.
do it. And I was like, well, I guess I could run it for a week,
Do a
maybe.
fast tracking trip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But, you start to look at the elevations on those passes and the up and down, and you realize that it's
Yeah.
not gonna go well.
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, that's cool. So I guess you know, the product itself, I think a lot of people think that a bear can or even kind of creating something like that, you know, seems instant to some people, right? And even like we were talking earlier, people think that Bearvault is this huge company, and it is. But like in terms of like a team, right? I look at that and see you see it on all the stores, and when you're in retail, a lot of times people get this misconception of, hey, this must be this massive company because they're in retail. But in reality, you're only a team of like five or so, right?
Yep, yep, and
Yeah,
there's a few more folks, in kinda warehouse and production, but,
yeah,
as far as our leadership and our development team and
yeah.
marketing and sales, we're a crew of 5.
Yeah. So hearing that, and for people who are listening and they're creating a brand or they have a brand right now that they think they need to be a huge company to get somewhere, you don't need to be massive. You just need to have a product that people love and that is really fulfilling a need. Kind of like what you were saying, how it really worked out really good for you. It was a need on your trip to have the bear vault. And a lot of times, I think we all when we go backpacking we know there's no bears and we're using our bear can really to keep the mice and stuff
Totally.
as well out of it. And I think
We
that's
joke
a great marketing thing too, right? Is like, hey, this is multi-purpose. It's just not, it's for the goats on the trail
uh-huh.
and everything too.
No, we joke often about the micro bears, the
Yeah.
squirrels and the mice and the marmots, but also the flying bears. You've got your ravens and your seagulls and, that could be,
Yeah.
maybe there's, no threat to your life, but just as feisty and,
Yeah.
will absolutely tear apart your food and, could be a disease vector and whatnot as well.
Yeah. When I was on shoot, where was it? It was in the North Cascades a few years ago. I didn't have enough space and I was on a mountain, so I didn't have anywhere to put my stuff. So I had just enough for my essentials and everything else in my bear vault. But then the other the other stuff I just put it in a dry bag off really far away. And I woke up in the morning and sure enough, like there's a massive hole in it and there was
Oh,
mouse droppings and
shoot.
everything.
And you can't
And I
trust
was
that food after that point, the
yeah,
hantavirus or,
yeah.
all the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, what do I do? Well, I guess it's all trash. I'm just now carrying
Ah,
like
it's brutal.
4 extra pounds of random trash that I was like, "Ah, I should have just I was like, I should have gone down maybe like a mile down, and I could have at least hung it somewhere. But then I
Sure.
was like, then it's a mile off trail.
Right.
So
And, North Cascades is not a simple mile. It's,
yeah,
tracking. I understand how
yeah.
that can happen for sure.
Well, I guess since I have it here with me, I have the new BV1 that you guys came out with,
Totally.
and sweet. So I have it collapsed, and you have it extended, and I think people have been seeing this a lot online, and I think what I really wanted to have you on here to talk about. One was, your the company and the journey, but also the journey of creating a new product. I think being a company that's been around for, I guess around 20 years, right? That um, you've gotten enough input that it's great to hear how did you guys go from the bear canister that you have now to this version?
That's a great question. I mean, so we get a lot of feedback, both from users and from the bears.
Mhm.
And so from bears, it's great. They're not quite as talkative, but they talk with their paws, jaws, and claws. And
Yeah.
we get all these canisters back. Basically, we have um a lifetime warranty on any wildlife damage. So if a bear chews on your canister, doesn't have to do, we can just put a single scratch on there, and we will swap that out for a brand new bear canister. And so we get all these canisters back, and we get a wealth of data about how bears interact with our products.
Okay.
Um, and so, we when we were realizing that we wanted to design kind of a new generation of bear can, we first took that piece of data into it, and then we also took the second half, the customer feedback, right? And so, having done this for 20 years, we hear a lot from folks, right? And there are three common pain points that pop up, and they're not shockers. People
Yep.
say that bear canisters can be heavy, bulky, and hard to open.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, well, how can we design a bear canister that solves all three of these problems? And it was a pretty like classic. Let's approach the pain points type of product iteration cycle. Um, and at first, we didn't have a solution for, the bulkiness. We were approaching, the lock first and foremost. A lot of folks, especially when, temperatures are cold and dexterity goes down in the hands,
Yeah.
the existing lock on the classics line, it can be tricky, and you can be left finding you need a stick or tent stake or something to push that in, and as much as we'd love for it to be perfectly easy, we admit that, sometimes it's not as easy as
Yeah.
we would like. And so we said, all right, we need a new locking system that is going to be easy to push. We want it to be more accessible. Folks that have older hands, maybe with arthritis, cold hands, weaker hands. And so we developed this new button housing that has this soft push rubber that basically is a spring-loaded button that pushes in and out. Still has a good bit of give, but also is strong enough that it's not going to be torn apart by a bear.
Yeah.
Um, and basically then rather than the simultaneous kind of pushing a nub under a stopper, we have these two asymmetrical locks that you push it in, it releases off at the tabs, and then you're able to spin and take the canister into the two
Yeah.
halves. And so that lock was really important for us, and we iterated through. I don't even know. I'd have to touch base with Mitch, our product developer, but I mean, based on, things from, various 3D models that we ran simulations on to 3D printed. I mean, probably 100 different lock designs,
Yeah.
maybe more, until we settled on the lock we have here. That's this simultaneous push, and then you spin the top of the canister once it's pushed in.
Yeah.
And so we keep dialing that in, tested a bunch of different materials, bunch of different springs, basically every variable to find the right balance of something that, a bear's not going to mess with this. And it's going to be easy to open. And then the
Yep.
other thing we built in was we built in a really nifty little fail safe. Well, in all of our testing and all the bears we've put this in front of, we have yet to see a bear chew off the buttons themselves,
Okay.
even though they protrude. And bears often will focus on things that protrude. That can be a real focus area for bears.
Hmm.
Um, if in the unlikely event that a bear takes off the buttons, we sized the locking mechanism such that if you take the aglets on your shoelaces and put the aglets of your shoelaces in, it'll still unlock the canister. So we wanted to have a fail-safe
Huh.
in there so that nobody gets locked out of their food, even after, a bear has
Yeah.
really goes to town on this canister. The
No
next
way.
focus area was weight.
Yeah.
And so basically on our existing canisters, the biggest area where weight gets concentrated is in the lid. That lid has to be pretty beefy.
Hmm.
It's a slightly softer plastic. Um, and yeah, you get a fair bit of the weight just
Yeah.
in that lid. And we said, well, what if we could design a canister that didn't have a lid? And then suddenly you save a ton of weight. And so that's where the center opening came from. And we were able to save additional weight, basically by using some new manufacturing techniques, some new tooling. So these bear vaults are made in a slightly different technique than the existing bear vaults.
Okay.
And this manufacturing technique allows us to specifically place the exact thickness of material in the places we want it. We have more control over the thickness than we did
Okay.
on the previous canisters. And so coming back to that idea of we've seen a lot of canisters chewed on, we put extra material in the places where bears will chew on it and less in the areas where bears are less likely to chew on it.
Okay.
And so by 3D mapping the places where the thickness of material should go, we basically were able to take quite a bit of weight off. And I mean, we're talking about, you know, grams to maybe a few ounces here.
Yeah.
But all these things add up, right? You
Yep.
remove a lid, you change the buttons, you remove material here and there, and suddenly, we have a can that comes in under 2 pounds, which is,
Yeah.
that was our goal is we wanted to be sub 2 pounds. And that's what this can is. It's 1 pound, 15 ounces.
Yeah.
And so when you compare that on a weight to volume ratio to our classic line of canisters,
Hmm.
that's about 20% more efficient on a weight to volume ratio, which, for those of us who like to shave the grams, myself included,
Yeah.
it definitely has a real impact on the trail. And, a bear canister no longer is that
Yeah.
item that's holding you back. Now you're
Yeah.
getting, benefit from it, and you can still use it as a stool and all those things.
Yeah.
The last piece that was the biggest component was the bulk side of it, right?
Yeah.
How do you get something that's hard-sided, rigid, can withstand, a grizzly bear going to town on this thing?
Yeah.
It's very hard to calculate, but, estimates vary, but, bears can when they do this, CPR pumping motion is
Hmm.
what the grizzly bears enjoy doing
Yeah.
the most, and estimates put that, anywhere from 1,000, maybe 2,000 pounds of force when bears
Wow.
are doing that pumping motion.
Yeah.
So, you have an object that's under 2 pounds, but it has to withstand a few thousand pounds of
Yeah.
force. Um, you know, uh, Based on our tests and our calculations, the BV1 is ready for about 3,000 pounds of
Hmm.
force. Um and so essentially, uh, we wanted something that was that tough and durable, but it also needed, to solve that issue of the bulk, right? And
Yeah.
that those seem like opposite issues, right? Something that's flexible is not strong, and something
Yeah.
that's strong is not flexible. And then our engineer really had this sort of aha moment of, well, what if the two halves telescoped into each other?
Yeah.
We had this idea of it meeting in the middle, um, but it was just a slight adjustment to make one side a little bigger and one side a little smaller and move the threads inside,
Yeah.
and suddenly it collapses down on itself.
Yeah.
And you can shrink this thing to half the size,
Yeah.
which we're stoked about. Of course, we anticipate most people will use it in the sense of, each day as their trip progresses, they'll make it smaller and smaller. It'll take up less of
Yeah.
their pack. We also expect a group of users, especially kind of the fast packing community or your bike packing community,
Yeah.
to basically take half of their food out, distribute it in hip belt pockets and through elsewhere throughout their pack,
Yeah.
collapse it all the way down to that halfway mark at the start of the
Yeah.
trip, put it in their pack, and then now they're carrying, something that's roughly equivalent to our 425 in size.
Yeah.
No matter how fast and light you're going, that can will fit, and it's not gonna be bulky in your pack. And then when you get to camp, you take everything out, you assemble it, and now you have even more space than our BV450
Yeah.
line. You've got, 4 to 5 days of space, but you didn't have that bulk on trail, which
Yeah.
we were really excited about that piece of innovation.
Yeah. So I know that was a ton on the innovation of the can and stuff like that, but I think it's really awesome to hear, like, I'm sure the engineer in your team, when you guys had this, like, especially the sizing portion of it, right? Where the twisting
Yum.
and being able to just collapse and stuff, like, that must have been such a cool moment to be able to, like, "Oh my gosh, this is it. We know this is it," right? Was that
100%.
iteration early on, or was that, like, how long did it take you to get to the design before you started doing the prototyping and stuff like that?
I'd
Were
say
you, like, locked in on that?
that was, like, mid design. Like,
Yeah,
this designing this cam is about a 5-year process.
yeah,
And there have been, oodles of iterations, along the way, and it wasn't really towards, I would say, the middle of the design process where, that idea kinda jumped off the page at us, and it
yeah,
really was kind of that classic, aha moment, so to
yeah,
speak, and that was a really special moment.
yeah. No, that's really cool, because as soon as I saw it, I know everybody saw it and was like, "Okay, well, let's actually see once we get it in our hands, how it works." And once I have it in my hand, and I was like, "Oh, this is awesome," because I think we've all had that on the trail. It's too big, or how do I fit it in my backpack? Especially when the more ultralight you go, the less room you
Yep,
typically have in your bag. So you're usually standing it straight up, and now you can actually, like, sit it where it's, like, flat on my back if I want to have it in my bag. If it's collapsed, or
yep.
I can strap it on and stuff like that. So I'm just excited to use it, for myself on the trail on my next trip. So, um, I wanted to go a little bit into the 3D printing side of it. Now, something like this, I'm assuming, like, you can't just you could do prototypes on the design of it, but you wouldn't do anything testing wise on it. But I the innovation of having 3D printing, I think I said something. I was talking with Lloyd from Garage Grown Gear about 3D printing and how I really wanted to get a 3D printer. Was that I think it's helping people go faster, right? With designs when it comes to a product, instead of having to send it out to get printed for yourself, to get prototypes back, you can literally do it in house that day, and then do iteration after iteration. So, do you think that the 3D printing process, I know, because 5 years in the 3D printing world is like a huge leap in technology. So it'd be interesting to hear, like, how late in the game you started using 3D printing, and if it was kind of essential in getting it out a lot earlier, or do you think it would be potentially even a couple of years more because you didn't have that 3D printing technology?
Yeah, I think 3D printing has really sped things up for us. I wish I had Mitch here to talk about some of the
Yeah.
nuances of, the exact 3D printer we use, and but I know that we use quite a few different filaments,
Yeah.
and are able to simulate a lot of the materials. Via the material properties of 3D printing have advantages and disadvantages, and
Yeah.
while you can simulate a lot, it's going to be inferior to the actual plastic molding that you get
Hmm.
with an end use product. But as far as, simulating user functionality, feel, sizing, component wear, a lot of things you can test with a 3D printing system.
Yeah.
And so we brought 3D printing into the process. I'd say around the time of kind of that aha moment.
Hmm.
And as we were doing that, we were able to, set, a couple, full size prototypes on the table, that had, different, thread configurations, different locks, and your entire team could basically pick up, version A off the table, version B off the
Yeah.
table. And then tomorrow you come back and, our engineer has version C and version D and version E.
Hmm.
And, actually it's one thing to look at it on the computer screen and visualize the CAD model. It's another thing to pick it up, get actually a sense for a feel of it, go walk over to the closet where we have a giant library of backpacks. All right,
Mhm.
we put this in a fast pack. Okay, well, I mean, how about a bigger like Deuter expedition pack?
Yeah.
Like a Knowles course. Like, let's put it in 10 different packs. Well, like, this one, the cord is rounded a bit better. It's able to fit, into this hyperlight pack. But this one,
Yeah.
we designed it this way, and oh, it's good in this way, but now it doesn't fit in the hyperlight pack, right? And
Yeah.
we can do all that way quicker.
Yeah.
That you can't really simulate all of those things.
Yeah. No, that's I think it's always interesting to know, for people who are listening who are again creating a brand versus people who are just backpackers. When you're creating a product, hearing that you probably have this huge closet of bags, right? You probably have so many because I mean, look at how many back backpacks are out there of different
Totally.
sizes, of different like you were talking about fast packing versus like a big expedition somewhere, where you're going to have a bigger bag and all that stuff. And you've got to figure out, okay, how can we fit at least get it to that middle ground of it'll work with probably 95% of the bags that are out there,
Yes, I'll
right?
put in a plug since I know a lot of your audience is, industry folks. I'm sure there's some pack manufacturers
Yeah.
listening. We are working on a project, and it's in its infancy now, and it is our data is published.
Yeah.
But basically, we are trying to compile basically a master spreadsheet of which packs fit with our bear canisters in which configurations.
Okay.
And so if there's a pack manufacturer out there that, if you'd like us to measure your packs, or if you'd like us to send some canisters for you to measure and share the data, we've heard from a lot of pack manufacturers that, your users, your hikers are thinking about canisters when they're purchasing a pack, and that's a purchase consideration.
Yeah.
And this is data that gives people buying confidence to say, I'm going on a 7-day trip. I need this bear canister. Is this can going to fit in this pack that I'm purchasing? And so we're working to basically build that into a fancy spreadsheet. Is
Oh,
really,
cool.
really what it is. And but in a helpful, easy to use web format. And so if there's a pack manufacturer out there who would like to participate in the project, please reach out, touch base, and we'd love to collaborate.
That's awesome. I love it that when businesses work together instead of just kind of compete against each other and everything else. I think we all grow a lot faster that way, right? As
Totally.
being a team in the industry instead of yelling at each other all the time and being bitter old people about it. So,
Totally. Collaboration's
um,
great.
yes. So, and it's great because I actually after this I'm recording with a backpacking company, and so I'll tell her about it.
Perfect.
Um, and she'll be like, "Oh yeah, totally." She designs bags, and I'm like, yeah. Um, okay, so going into a little bit more about the industry and stuff like that, I always try to ask a company if there was like an oh crap moment in building the brand, whether it was, when before you were there on the team, that was a previous story. We've had some companies talk about how they had a shipment come out and then the truck caught on fire and
Oh
it
my
wasn't their
gosh.
fault, but then the manufacturer wouldn't do anything and then the trucking company wasn't covering it or all these crazy things. Or maybe there's another story. So I don't know if you have an oh crap moment that comes to mind where that you could share with everybody.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, in 20 years, there's plenty of things that happen. I mean, even I think there's some story from, maybe a decade ago of Bearvaults rolling down the highway after, something terrible happening. But I think, the one that I think is kind of a really neat story of kind of industry collaboration is,
Mhm.
and maybe it's not the biggest oh crap moment in
Yeah.
the world, but while we were, prototyping and doing field testing on the new BV1, and this was actually pretty late in the design process. We had the design pretty much fully finalized, had done most of our bear testing, and we had the canister
Mhm.
out in the field with, some product testers, and we were collaborating with, Sarah from Treeline Review, which if
Mhm.
you haven't had Sarah on the podcast, you absolutely should.
Okay.
Write that name down. Just one of the most knowledgeable people, you'll meet about, gear and understanding what makes good gear versus bad gear on
Yeah.
on the market. And when we were looking for testers, we wanted folks who were actually going to get out into the field with it, not just look at
Mhm.
it at home and be like, "Oh yeah, it seems nice," and
Yeah.
maybe I'll get out there with it someday. And so Sarah took the Bearvault out into some really nasty weather and basically ran into some freezing rain
Yeah.
conditions. And Sarah had the canister completely collapse, kind of like the one that you have on
Yeah.
your desk is. And when the freezing rain came down and dripped over the canister and encased the canister in ice, she wasn't able to get it open. It was frozen shut.
Oh, wow.
And we're going, "Oh, no, like, this
Yeah.
is not good,"
Yeah.
like, the whole point of this canister is that it's easy to open,
Yeah.
you can get in, and, essentially what we learned was that when it's fully collapsed, like the one on your table,
Yeah.
that you're not able to get the grip, the leverage, the lower portion is almost
Yeah.
entirely, kinda sucked up into the
Yeah.
upper
Yeah.
portion, or depending how you view it, the upper portion is completely
Yeah.
screwed down onto the lower portion, depending on your perspective. And so in that position, your hand just slips off of the lower section.
Yeah.
Luckily the fix wasn't, particularly elaborate. It was more of a customer education piece,
Yeah.
a design change. But so with that feedback, we were able to um, really change a lot of our customer education videos,
Mhm.
our product pamphlets, and tell people, hey, store this thing in a locked position with the lock, fully engaged, because
Yeah.
then you have all of this surface area to grip, and it won't
Yeah.
be any problem to break through any ice that forms
Yeah.
in extreme weather like that. And so I think the biggest takeaway from that was, working with, product testers. I think there can be kind of this fear of working with somebody who's maybe in a gear review capacity and saying, "Oh no, what if they have something, bad to say about the
Yeah.
product?" Which, maybe that's a
Yeah.
fair concern. You don't want bad press for a product, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you might learn something really important and get way ahead of things
Yeah.
by collaborating with somebody. And so, I think we were able to turn something that kind of was this "oh no" moment
Yeah.
into a really awesome learning, collaboration, strengthen that relationship, and provide, resources so that doesn't happen to anybody, any customers in the field.
Yeah. Well, and getting that feedback can be more painful depending on your role in it, right? Like if it's just me making my own bags at home and I send it out to somebody and they have a bad review or they're talking about it, it can hurt versus when you have a team, at least you're working together, it's still going to hurt, but it might not hurt as much because it might not be so much your baby. I'm sure the engineer, he's like, "Well, oh my gosh," but
Of course,
like
of
there's,
course. It's hard to
you
let the
know,
Reddit comments roll off sometimes and,
yeah.
and all those things, but so it goes.
Yeah, but at least you're able to change because I think some people think sometimes you need to redesign your entire product, but a lot of times it might be a user education thing more so, right? Because sometimes I get products in and I have no instructions at all because I might get it in before there's even any of the pamphlets
We're
and
like,
instructions that come with you.
"Yum."
And so now I'm trying to figure it out based on just a short email from somebody or whatever. And at least you're able to kind of say, okay, we can make this video or we can put it in here to store it in certain weather conditions like this. Cause I would never have thought, I would probably try to throw it on a rock and try to smash the ice off. But you're never going to get like certain amount of, depending on how you store it, right? You might get like if I store it like this, for example, I might get, especially freezing rain. You're not in
Exactly.
freezing rain that often, but it's going to get in there, and no matter how much you beat it, that the water gets in and then freezes. So I
Then
see
it's
why
really
you're
stuck.
like, yeah, that's a great point, and at least you didn't have to go back to, oh no, we got to now make another 100,000 of these. Uh,
Exactly, which, if plastic molds are extraordinarily expensive, especially
Yeah.
the way this one is designed, it can I mean, there's things you can do, levers you can pull, but you reach a
Yeah.
certain point and, you have your design, you validated with bears and if things come up,
Yeah.
you could that could be concerning, but, luckily, there's a lot of things that you can educate around,
Yeah.
right? And that, It's just like a car, when you get a car, that requires maintenance, and you have
Yeah.
to know the rules of the road, how to drive the car. You don't rev the tachometer, past the red line unless
Yeah.
you want to damage your car. And it's just like that with any piece of gear, even when it's something that's tough and durable,
Yeah.
and can withstand a bear, like a bear vault. There's still you got to take care of it. There's maintenance you need to do on it to keep it clean and functioning well.
That's it.
Um, and there's a right way to use it and a wrong way to use it. And
Yeah.
it's the old adage, but in 5 years of Bearvault, I have definitely confirmed that there is a substantial overlap between the smartest of bears and the, perhaps the dumbest of
Yeah.
our product, users. Not all
Yeah.
of them by any means,
Yeah.
but, we do everything we can to provide, videos, pamphlets,
Yeah.
for every communication style that somebody has.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we're providing an educational resource.
Yeah. So I guess my next question, so I have two. I guess the first would be, let me write this down so I don't forget it. Is um, the bear testing portion of it. So we've had GrubCan on the podcast before, and talking to the owner's wife and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
Holly's great.
yeah. And so it's great to hear, like, we're not competing with each other. We have different products that have different functions and everything and different uses. But I heard that, like, the bear can, um, what do you call it? When you get it, like, officially certified that you can
Yeah.
use it in certain parks. Yosemite is one of those things where it's hard to get stuff certified. Everything else seems to be something that's pretty much easier to certify versus, like, the backstory. I could get into it, I'm sure, with that. But, like, is the new can versus the older cans? Is it take a while to get that certified? What's the process of getting your product, especially with bears? Is it a government certification, or is it more just a take our word for it?
That's a great question. Certification is a variety of things. That's also great that you had Holly and Jim from Grub
Yeah.
and on. They're an awesome couple.
Yeah.
And they really care about bears also.
Yes.
So yeah, so testing for us is really a multifaceted process. It starts long before we get to a bear, and there's a lot of if you're in the design world, you might be familiar with FEA analysis.
Okay.
We probably have all seen at least maybe stylized images of this, but basically this is where you simulate with a computer force on an
Mhm.
object, and you see how much it's deforming when you put a certain load on it. And so long before a product ever gets in front of a bear, you're doing thousands of these simulations, seeing, okay, wait, man, we have a stress concentration here. It would totally crack or deform.
Yeah.
Something would happen here. Let's change the geometry. Let's change the thickness. Let's do something different. All right, we fixed that spot. Oh, now it created a spot over here, and it's, I
Yeah.
think it can often be this balancing act. And then, you get to a really good spot and you're like, all right, now let's 3D print this one. Then you learn a bunch more and, you go through, quite a few of these iterations. And then
Yeah.
we're putting it in front of, physical testing. It could be as rudimentary as, you laughed a minute ago about, smacking on a rock to try to get the ice off,
Yeah.
and, at an early stage, it can be that rudimentary. We're
Yeah.
smacking on a rock, dropping it off of our roof, just really basic stuff before we get, quality
Yeah.
lab data involved. Um, once some of that early validation happens, you're doing some laboratory testing on it, and then you're putting it in front of bears for the first time. This is often outside of the official testing channels, and we want to
Uh-huh.
see how bears are interacting with this. Often too, when we go to test, at the official testing facilities, which I'll share more about in a moment,
Yeah.
often not testing the entire product at once. Eventually, we reach a point where, like, we're like, "All right, this is the test. It is
Yeah.
everything put together." But we might go and say, "All right, we're just really testing the buttons here. We'll do something, put the rest of the canister together, and what we really wanna learn about is the buttons." And
Uh-huh.
and we're gonna have the bears focus on the buttons, and maybe the rest of the canisters, I don't know, glued shut or something like
Yeah.
that. And we're not really worried about looking at that part of it. We just wanna gather data on, say, the buttons, and we might
Okay.
do that a few times, and then, you gather all this data, you keep refining, and then, you kinda have your official IGBC test. And so the IGBC is the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee,
Mhm.
and it's basically representatives from the Forest Service, National Park Service, a few other land managers that have gotten together. And the broader IGBC, their mission is tasked with the reintroduction, management, and recovery of the grizzly bear into various recovery zones. For instance, you mentioned the North Cascades before we
Yeah.
got on the call this morning. And, there's been a lot of planning and work in place to reintroduce, for instance, grizzly bears to
Yeah.
the North Cascades. Similarly, you got your, Yellowstone Recovery Zone,
Yeah.
Bitterroot, Selkirk's, Cabinet Yaak, etc. One piece of the IGBC is their bear resistant products program. And they
Okay.
basically issue a certification number for coolers, horse panniers, and backpacking portable containers like a Bearvault.
Okay.
And they also actually certify like the metal lockers that you often see in campsites, or
Uh-huh.
even backcountry, back locations, or those dumpsters and trash cans.
Yeah.
And so, what the IGBC has done is they've partnered with two facilities that have grizzly bears. So, one is the Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center in West Yellowstone, Montana.
Mhm.
Other is the WSU Bear Center in Pullman, Washington. Um, and those two facilities have awesome grizzly bears that are really good at
Yeah.
getting into products. They've done it enough that they know where to shake and shimmy and where to press and the
Yeah.
techniques. And these bears often will unveil your weaknesses incredibly quickly. You'll show up with something they're like, "This is so tough.
Yeah.
Bear's got no shot on this," and 5 minutes later, it's in 14 pieces, and you're
Yeah.
scratching your head how it happened, right? And so how the test is structured is, um, you show up with the product, and they first do a visual inspection. They make sure that there's nothing's gonna be dangerous for the bears. You don't have sharp nails sticking out that's
Yeah.
gonna, injure a bear or whatnot. And then they put you something that's basically a high value food reward for the bears. In simple terms, that probably means pizza, dog kibble, honey water, something nasty.
Yeah.
Often
Yeah.
fish heads. When you get the product back at the end, often
Oh.
it's a little bit nasty, and even after closing it out, it
Yeah.
still vaguely smells of fish. And anyway, so they'll put that out there, and the bears will begin to engage with it. And how you have to pass the test, it has to be an hour of direct contact time. So that is defined as, scratching it, biting on it, or pumping on it. If the bear is only licking it or steps back for a moment, the
Yeah.
timer stops. And so
Okay.
only when the bear is actively engaging with it does that timer run. And man, do they engage with it. I mean, these bears go to town on these
Yeah.
products. And often it's in like a 5 minute segment, and they'll kind of, get out of breath. They're mammals
Yeah.
too, right? And they're like, all right, I need a break. But once you accumulate 60 minutes of contact time, the product is pulled out. There can't be any holes or gaps or cracks greater than a quarter of an inch. So it's inspected, photos are taken, and then the video footage and the photos are all submitted to a committee with the IGBC for review. Then
Okay.
provided that everything checks out, no funny business or anything, the certification number is issued. And that
Okay.
certification number is basically your ticket into the vast majority of the parks.
Yeah.
And that's the certification, that you can stand behind to basically say, this company has done their due diligence.
Yeah.
This is a real product. It's gone through proper testing. It's not any sort of counterfeit, which is a new issue that we've been dealing with recently.
Interesting.
Mm,
Yeah.
Some counterfeiting that is not tested, not certified, is a hazard to bears.
Yeah.
You asked about Yosemite a bit.
Yeah.
So Yosemite is really unique in that they manage their own list, and they do not look to the IGBC as the certifying body.
Yeah.
Um, their reasons are multifaceted. One, black bears and grizzly bears ultimately are different.
Mhm.
While they, come, while they have perhaps more similarities than differences,
Yeah.
grizzly bears often approach things with kind of their physical size and their brute force. Meanwhile, black bears approach things with a lot more nuance. They'll really check it out. They'll nibble here, nibble there, and often I think they're a bit more focused and
Yeah.
targeted than grizzly bears. And so that's one component. The other component is that there's unfortunately a little bit of ugly history around
Yeah.
the Yosemite testing program, and one of the other product manufacturers, um, you know, sued with that
Yeah.
with certification process. It went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Yosemite National Park won, but it effectively created a regulatory gridlock, and so
Yeah.
even if you made a product out of tank armor is what I often will say,
Yeah.
and you made it super thick and out of 3-inch steel or whatever,
Yeah.
at this time, it would not be added to the Yosemite list. It's not
Yeah.
a measure of the product's bear resistance. It's a
Yeah.
measure of, were you on the list before 2015 or not?
Yeah.
And, so, of course, we look forward to the day when somehow that may change in the future, and we'd love to see the BV1 on
Yeah.
that list. But at this time, that list, remains
Yeah.
fixed in place, and we respect that fully,
Yeah.
not encouraging customers to go, try to carry this behind rangers' back. We
Yeah.
fully believe that this would stand up to any bear in Yosemite National
Yeah.
Park, and we're confident. But we have full respect of the land managers, their authority, and
Yeah.
their decision making.
Yeah. Because I didn't hear that until Holly told me that, and I was like, man, because every time I go into the park, I'm like, hey, I have a can, because they ask me, right?
And
They don't ask me, was it a can that's regulated before or whatever, the date. And when she told me, I was like, oh my gosh, now I had to double check, because you know, I don't want to get a random fine, and I'm hoping that they would understand that, hey, like my ignorance a little bit in it
yeah,
for a lot of people, but also being educated on it, I think is huge. And
totally.
so, because yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you have, like you're talking about, in like the imposters and stuff like that. I mean, I know in every industry there's people that copy ideas, or they also there's a lot of stuff you buy online that's not certified, and it
Mm,
says it has certifications, because I mean anybody can Photoshop a label on anything
of
and
course.
say they have a number or whatever. And most like I'm trying to get my son right now a one of those electric bikes,
Yeah.
and he wants this one brand that all of his friends are getting. And one, it costs a fortune. I'm like, buddy, I can't buy that. And secondly, it's like a class 3 vehicle. So I was like, okay, well, in our state, you have to be 15 plus in
Yeah.
order to even ride it. And then you would have to, all these other things. And so your friends are technically, because they're 13, their
They're not technically
parents,
supposed to be those things. Those bikes were scary,
yeah.
Craig.
Oh
Kids have
my
been
gosh.
zipping around in my neighborhood. I worry about TBIs on those kids. I mean,
Yes.
it's something else.
I mean, they're flying, and like, the ones that they have go 45, 50 miles an hour. I told my son, I was like, hey, listen, it's regulated to 20, I think 28 miles per hour, depending on where you are in Georgia or whatever. I'm fine with getting you that, because one, I don't want to get fined, um, because I'm the parent and I'm ultimately responsible. But then a lot of it is, we're just not educated as consumers. You see an ad online for a bike, and the kids all want this new trendy bike. The parents go out and buy it, thinking it's just a bicycle with an electric motor, but they don't understand the nuances behind the actual laws and stuff. And the laws are trying to, keep up with technology a lot of times, but that a whole other story. But you have those things. So it's interesting that you're having people who are unregulated creating bear canisters. So they're really not caring about the animals, I would think too, because they probably didn't done any of the testing. They just think it's going to work.
Yeah, this is a brand new issue for us, and we're still learning how to deal with it, and we're learning a lot from other brands. We've been touching base with other companies who've been through this, and
Yeah.
approaching it on every front through Amazon channels, legal channels, etc. But
Yeah.
basically, yeah, there's companies, they're based in China, that are strictly looking for profit. They don't
Yeah.
care at all about user safety or the health and well being of bears, and they just see, a SKU that's doing well on Amazon and see an opportunity
Yeah.
to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
I mean, and they invest still quite a bit into the tooling to make a plastic part like this, and they've,
Yeah.
they're trying to sell a bear canister, but there's no IGBC certification. If you go to the official list on IGBC, their website, you're not going to find this
Yeah.
knockoff product listed.
Yeah. So I guess my next question is just kind of pivoting from what we've been talking about, like the development process of it, going into the sales of the new canister. Since you already make such a good can, right? What are the hurdles that you've found maybe marketing to people that already have a can? I mean, obviously the great part about it is the flexibility of the can, right? Is that okay, maybe I have the can before, but now I can get this one and it can serve multiple purposes. But do you find like, oh no, so now we have to, of course, there's lots of people who still need bear cans,
Yeah,
right? But what are the marketing things that you've kind of done or hurdles that you've kind of seen in marketing a new product to previous people who still love your product overall?
it's a great question, Craig. And I think, we approach it really honestly. We want to communicate the features, benefits of this product. We don't want to oversell it in any
Yeah.
way. We don't want to, force that product down the throat of anyone who needs it. Like if you have your Bearvault and you love it and enjoy it, great. Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna tell you you have to buy this new bear canister. Of course, I'm very happy if you want to increase, your fleet of bear canisters in the garage, but we build products to last. Our
Yeah.
products, a general rough estimate of lifespan is 10 years of heavy use. Quite often it's longer.
Yeah.
um and so if you have a canister that's working great, that's awesome, and, if that's working for you and it fits your needs, but if this is a canister that if the new canister is something that you feel good about carrying, if you're excited about that it's lighter, that it takes up less space in your pack, that it's easy to open in the morning, that you get additional options for how you divide your food and organize your food, if that gets you excited, if that makes it feel like it's not a burden to carry a bear canister, but rather this is something that complements and accentuates your backpacking experience,
Yeah.
then by all means, like, please purchase a BV1. And I think that just kinda comes down to, like, if I could encapsulate our marketing style in a word, like, it's joyful. Like,
Yeah.
you know, bear canisters often can get, like, a lot of bear products in the world of bear spray, bear safety, bear training, bear canisters, is often a fear message, which is a pretty easy message when
Yeah.
it comes to, bears, and it's kind of this, who's gonna make it out of the woods, you or the bear, and the product you carry matters,
Yeah.
survival. And I mean, if that's the message you want to go with, sure. But the data says that, human bear conflicts, bear attacks are actually pretty uncommon.
Yeah.
And instead we can approach it from this joyful perspective and say, how wonderful is it that we can go into the backcountry? How wonderful it is that we have products like this that give
Yeah.
you the opportunity to travel light and free, but also do your part to keep the ecosystem, healthy.
Yeah.
And so I think that joy comes through in all of the marketing materials we've created around the BV1. And, early signals would say that people are really resonating with that. We can
Yeah.
hardly keep these things on the shelves.
Yeah.
And, both veteran users that have had, bear canisters for ages and, maybe have all of our other sizes are, eager to get a can
Yeah.
like this. And also, as you said, there are people that are, heading out into the backcountry for the first time. Every year,
Mhm.
backpacking is a activity that has a certain amount of churn. People are coming in and out of the activity
Yeah.
that creates new opportunities to sell bear canisters, to folks heading out there. We've also really focused in the last few years on communicating to folks that are backpacking outside of the areas where a canister is strictly required.
Mhm.
So I think, we maybe had a misconception for many years. The vast majority of our customers were using canisters in places where you were legally required to use a canister. And it was a small fraction of people that were using canisters, just kind of out of the goodness of their heart,
Yeah.
wanting to have that peace of mind and protect the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And, we've collected a lot of user data since then and learned that, oh, actually, quite a few folks are, not in areas that require canisters, and they are doing this just because they feel that it makes their trip better. And
Yeah.
so, we've shifted marketing a bit since then to communicate to that audience a little bit better and have the message be a little bit less of a focus on, well, when you're in Yosemite and Yosemite tells you, the government tells
Yeah.
you, you have to carry this, changing that message a bit.
Yeah. Well, that's good too, because I found like I was one of those people that I would only take it when I legally was required to, and then eventually I was like, okay, let me take it one to keep the little micro bears out, and stuff like that, because again, I had that on Sahale. I had the critters get into my stuff, and secondly, I was just like, okay, I want to be able to come back out here and enjoy the space and not create a mess for everybody else. Because man, when critters get into your stuff, I mean, they don't just like nibble on it a bit; they drag crap all over the place, and then a lot of times you can't find half of that stuff, and then there's tin foil over here, and there's this over here, and all that stuff. So it really helps, I think, the environment too. And
Yes.
I've been reading a lot of posts lately about people not giving out their locations, especially a
Mhm.
lot of like social media influencers saying like, "Hey, I'm not going to give this out because," and they're gatekeeping it because they want to protect the environment. And I'm like, well, if we protect the environment, maybe they wouldn't gatekeep these locations so much, so we could go to these really neat places that I'm like, hey, I've sent messages to people, hey, can you share this location? And they either they won't message me back, or they'll say, well, I want to protect the environment. I totally get it, but I'm like, I really want to go.
Yep.
So
And if we can be good stewards of it,
yeah.
you want your son to be able to backpack there,
Oh yeah.
experience, a bear in a healthy, natural context, and you want the human bear experience to be the best part of your trip,
Yeah.
not the worst part of your trip. And especially with bears, I mean, when you think about kind of the whole gambit of leave no trace, right?
Yeah.
And there is when you think about your principles, all of them are important, but few have as lasting of an impact as a human bear conflict or
Yeah.
respecting wildlife. If you walk off trail, if you poop on the trail, those things have a real impact. But after a season, after the rains come and go, that may have less of an impact. With a bear, bear can live for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Once a bear accesses human food, it doesn't forget that. It
Yeah.
bears have this amazing memory. Their brains are coded in what's called spatiotemporal memory. They think about, well, where and when they found food, and their
Okay.
brains and their biology are entirely designed around this. I could go on and on about
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
bears have evolved this way, but once they access human food, the same reasons we package food, it's calorically dense and
Yeah.
rich. Think how much grass you have to eat as a bear to equal a Snickers bar, right?
Yeah.
And so once a bear has accessed human food from one person's responsibility, right? You came into that bear's home for one night, your quick backpacking trip, and now everyone who comes into that area for years to come, and that bear, may have cubs and teach those cubs the same
Yeah.
behaviors. Now everyone else's experience is changed because of one person's
Yeah.
responsibility. And ultimately, the saying "a fed bear is a dead bear" is 100% true.
Yeah.
Data puts it at around 2,000 bears a year in the States here are euthanized for
Wow.
human bear conflict. That's a huge impact to our
Yeah.
to our ecosystems. And with a little bit of user responsibility, we can bring those numbers down, and bears can be the best part of our trips, not the worst.
Yeah. That's great info. Our just my question just randomly was like, are bears similar to, like a squirrel will bury his nuts and then know exactly where they are like the next year? Is it similar thought? Like they just remember once they've done it once, they just know for forever?
Exactly. Some bears do have a little bit of like a caching behavior, kind of like you were
Yeah.
saying. Most bears don't act kind of on a caching basis.
Yeah.
But as far as the spatiotemporal memory, that's exactly how it works. So if a bear found huckleberries on a particular hillside at a particular time of year, they're going to come back to that same hillside the next year and look for those same huckleberries. And
Yeah.
they have an incredible memory in that regard. And the exact same thing goes if they
Okay.
find human food in a campsite, they're gonna come back to that exact same campsite, again and again. And also if they learn how to, access human food, for instance, take Desolation Wilderness outside of Tahoe.
Yeah.
Um, there basically was a generation of bears out there that quickly realized how to pull down food hangs. And once a bear knows
Yeah.
how to pull down a food hang, it's really good at doing it. And the rangers in that area were estimating that about 10 food hangs a night were being pulled down
Wow.
in Desolation Wilderness. And it reached this crisis level where they said, we have to bring in these bear canisters. And it's very much a reactive approach to
Yeah.
say, this is kind of a crisis. We need to enforce the bear canisters. But the bears, in their amazing memory, they're like, we know exactly where these food hangs are. We know
Hmm.
where the campsites are. We know where the trees are. You know, I think bears' intelligence is often underestimated. They are wonderful creatures that are
Yeah.
very smart. They're not just kind of these dopey forest Bruins, bumbling around
Yeah.
like in the cartoons, perhaps.
Yeah. There's this comedian, he's always I think it's Brian Regan, he has this funny thing he talks about, where we always go like, where people are like, "Man, dolphins are just as smart as humans, right?" Or, "Beavers are just as smart," and they're like, "They build their dams," and it's like, like, I'm not downplaying animals, um, their smartness and their memories and stuff like that, but, like, they build the sticks and muds Hoover Dam,
Totally.
right? It's like,
Well, they
but
still haven't figured out
yeah.
the bear canisters, and we've managed to outsmart them
Yeah.
with our products. But when the beavers start building Hoover Dam, we'll be afraid of the bears
Yes.
with our canisters.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, thank you for all the information. I guess just the one last question I have, about, y'all in the industry is, as a business, being in the business for a long time versus some people we have on have been in the business for only a year or so. Where do you think the company sits? Like, if you were a trail, what trail part of the trail would you be? Would you guys be in the middle of the trail, or you're kind of like coming to the end, or you still got a lot going, that kind of thing?
That's a great question. I think it's a long trail
Yeah.
with bear canisters. Bear canister technology is here to stay.
Yeah.
The regulatory trend is only towards more canisters. Land managers really believe in the use of hard-sided bear canisters to protect
Yeah.
wildlife, and I think that is something that will continue to progress forwards. And so, wall canisters may take different shapes and sizes, and there may be innovations in material science that enable different geometries and shapes and sizes and locking mechanisms. I
Yeah.
think bear canisters are something that are going to become an even more core piece of backpacking. For Bearvault specifically, I think we are, kind of in a sense, with your metaphor, we're coming out of tree line and there's a big, beautiful mountain pass there that we're starting to climb towards, which
Yeah.
is the BV1, right? And we've
Yeah.
just emerged out of tree line in the forest and put this canister out in front of the world, and people are getting excited about it, just like you do as you begin to climb into the alpine towards that
Yeah.
beautiful mountain pass. And I think that's kind of the plateau we're heading up onto, and we're really excited for this new generation of bear canisters, and would invite everyone to join us in that and check out the BV1.
That's cool. Awesome. I guess I do one more question. Is there any advice for people who are in the industry, maybe with it's the marketing side of things, if they have their business, like one really good piece of advice you could give to someone in their journey in the outdoor space?
That's really good. I think something that's been really valuable for us at Bearvault is working with the numbers have shifted over the years of what's considered a micro influencer, small influencer and whatever, but working with influencers around the 10,000 follower space has been extremely effective for us over the years. It as a smaller brand with without a giant marketing budget, we're able to develop, relationships and partnerships with folks around that size, and often get some wonderful content in partnership with folks at an affordable rate. Folks are eager to build their portfolio. This is not in any way to take advantage of folks, but say, look, here is kind of a budget approach, but often this is at a time when folks at around 10,000 followers in a way, maybe they haven't sold out yet, and they're not their audience sees them as extremely, um authentic and they are really reaching their niche. And then also, you have a friend in the space. And so, maybe next year, they have a couple reels that really blow up and suddenly they have 70,000 followers instead of 10,000 followers. And now you have a relationship with these folks that often can pay dividends down the road. Once you kind of build these relationships. So we've had a ton of success focusing on folks around that 10,000 mark. And so that's my little marketing nugget of wisdom of something that's worked well for us.
I just really like the fact that you're not just looking at, because people think a lot of times, hey, you're working with micro influencers, companies are trying to take advantage of them, but you're, I think, in that kind of a barter, old school kind of a barter system, is it needs to be fair for
Exactly.
both people, right? And if you're making it fair for everybody, it's going to be a great relationship, and then you can continue, like you said, to grow that relationship as they grow. It's good for you as well because you have that authentic connection with them. It wasn't just a, hey, you have 1 million followers, I'm going to pay you $1 zillion just so you can market this product for me. It's, hey, if you like this product, that's great. Let's work together. If not, um, let's then part ways or not even work together
Totally.
with that. So
And I think that
that's really good.
authenticity is huge, and just, we've developed so many wonderful relationships, and, it's just so targeted, especially, we have a product that is exclusively for backcountry use. There's a lot of
Yeah,
brands out there that, maybe their core line is for backpacking, but they also offer, product for front country campers and
yeah,
whatnot. And so when you're thinking about advertising channels, if you can, hone in on maybe camping, that's good enough,
yeah,
but for Bearvault, it has to be backpacking,
yeah,
they can't be camping, it can't be hiking, it has to be backpacking and
yeah,
working with, smaller influencers that are targeted into those niches allows us to kind of have that scalpel level
yeah,
precision and reach a really authentic audience and build those relationships, which has been just so wonderful for us. And we've honestly created so many friendships out of that
yeah.
too. And we see these folks at places like trail days and whatnot, and it's often this great kind of reunion of like, oh my gosh, you were the first brand we worked with, and
Yeah,
see where we're at now, and it's been really really fun.
yeah. No, that's really neat. And I didn't even think about that. Like, with your product being, you know, pretty niche in that, like, it's not a very broad. A lot of people will try to come up with a product that's very, 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 very broad, so you can, you know, nail a whole bunch of different demographics. Versus yours is very small. So marketing that is a lot more key than most people, right? So that's a good. If you're out there and you're creating a product and you're listening, like, and you're creating something that's really small, you really have to watch specifically how you market it. You can't just go very broad with it. You've got to target your audience very well. The great thing about technology, even using AI a lot, is you can do a lot more deep research into what your demographic is, or even thought, AI thoughts on what you didn't even think about could be your demographic or the people that you're trying to reach out to. So that's cool. Awesome. Okay. So Grant, I'm going to just go straight into it. Oh, before we go into it, guys, if people are looking for Bearvault, I already know where we can find Bearvault, but if people are looking for it, where can we find y'all?
Check out our website, bearvault.com. That's the best place to get information. We also have a dealer map. We're in quite a few doors across the country, and that's a great place to find a Bearvault can.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just going to go ask you a few questions just to kind of get to know you a little bit. So without further ado, first question, and this is always my favorite again, is your favorite national park?
Grand Teton.
Really? Okay, I've never been.
Go.
Yeah, I've never been.
It's awesome.
Sounds
But
amazing.
it's
Every
hard to
time
pick.
someone says,
I mean, honestly, like,
yeah,
I think my favorite places are probably outside the national parks. Like,
yeah,
you lose the crowds. Like, I'm a
yes,
big fan of, like, wilderness areas, like the Frank Church Wilderness Area
uh-huh,
growing up, or the Sawtooths. I mean, I think the best places are probably outside the national parks, but if I had to
yeah,
pick a national park, I'd probably go with the Tetons.
awesome. All right, next thing is solo hike or crew mission.
Normally it's my wife and I, but I love a good solo backpacking trip.
Yeah. This is a question since you backpack with your wife. It's funny how my wife will tell me this is she just said this the other day. She was like, "You need to go shower." And I was like, "It's funny how you'll camp with me for a week of no showers and you won't say a thing, but I will literally have showered in the morning and then in the afternoon she'll be like, "You need to go take a shower." And I'm like, "I don't know how that works in my mind." So yeah. All right, coffee or electrolyte drinks on the trail?
I'm definitely more of an electrolyte drink fan. Coffee is such a diuretic.
Yes. All right, one word that would your team would use to best describe you.
Passionate,
Okay.
energetic. Yeah.
What is worst trail snack you've ever tried?
Ooh, worst. I think like it's any good bar, but when it gets like frozen, like when like a Cliff Bar turns to like a
Yeah, yeah,
rock at about like
yeah,
20 degrees Fahrenheit, like any trail snack can be awful. And that's honestly like the flip side of that question is I'm a huge fan of those Pro Bar meals because they don't
yeah.
really freeze. They stay malleable even in cold temperatures.
Really?
And that, and what that might be more backcountry skiing than
Yeah,
backpacking depending on the season, but
yeah.
Pro Bar meals are one of my favorites because they don't freeze. So even like Bobo's bars, Cliff
Oh, I love Bobo's
bars,
bars. Yeah,
any sort of like, classic energy bar or protein bar, man, they turn to rocks as soon as they
yeah,
freeze.
yeah. I'm always throwing them in. I'm like, okay, I want a snack. All right, let me throw it like somewhere where I know there's a little bit of heat, so I can
Yes.
like instead of just breaking a tooth on the trail. All right. So, what's your favorite trail snack?
Ah, that's a good question. Um, I mean, I'm a sucker for candy. My dentist would probably hate me saying that, but
Yeah.
I love some, like, Nerds gummy clusters and, Sour Patch Kids. I
Yeah.
love that instant empty calorie sugar.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like for this podcast, I need to get a sponsor and it needs to be Nerds Gummy Clusters
Yes.
because we talk about that so much on this show that it makes me laugh every time someone says my favorite trail snack is Nerds Gummy Clusters.
Yes.
All right. The biggest splurge that you guys have had for your business
Biggest
financially.
splurge.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's interesting. Well, we're pretty thrifty, but I actually haven't set it up yet. So maybe this is but sitting in the lobby of our office today, I'm gonna set up. We have a brand new tent that we're gonna roll out at Trail Days, and rather than go
Oh,
with your
cool.
traditional kind of metal pole like standard out tent that's really hard to travel with, we
Yeah.
got a fancy inflatable tent, and it's a 10 by 10 tent that you blow it up,
Okay.
and it's kind of similar material to like a paddleboard.
Uh huh.
We're really excited about it, but I haven't tested it yet. So, come say hi at Trail Days and see if I'm still excited about our new tent or not.
Those people don't realize how much looks like a simple trade show tent or like a type of display can actually be.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I've done photo shoots for the marketing stuff that I've done here in Atlanta for like McDonald's and Georgia Pacific for their trade show booths and everything. And then when I was shooting for the trade show booth company and everything else, I looked at the price of it and I was like, oh my gosh, in my mind, I was like, I could build this for so much. I get it why, and it's got to be portable and all that stuff. But I'm like, I can't believe how much
Yeah.
it costs. And
Yeah.
that's a quick setup too, I'm sure, right? It's just
Totally.
inflate and go.
Exactly. And what the nice thing is that it can fit in a checked bag under 50 pounds on the airplane.
Oh,
You don't have to mail it ahead of you or send a
yeah,
pallet or any of those things. And that's the reason we went with this tent.
that's cool. Everybody's listening. That's a great hack if you're doing a trade show. Find something that you can check because the minute you guys start shipping stuff, it costs a fortune.
Yes.
All right. What's one app that you can't live without for work?
For work. Google Drive? No, but, oh, that's a great question. I don't think we're super fancy when it comes to apps. I mean, we're pretty basic.
Yeah.
Google Suite, Adobe Suite,
Yeah.
for creative, we use probably more Gemini in the office than
Okay.
ChatGPT. Um, I'd say we're a pretty simple bunch.
Okay. And last question, what's one outdoor skill that you still kind of suck at?
Ooh. Something new that I tried recently just for the fun of it, because I'm very much an ultralight backpacker.
Yeah.
But earlier this spring, I got together with some really good friends, and we went out into a really remote area for the night and tried some like traditional kind of bushcraft survival type
Okay.
skills, and it was a riot. And we were trying to
Yeah.
build shelters with downfall and all the, like, kinda classic, like, woodsy, kinda manly man bushcraft
Yeah.
stuff. I
Yeah.
was not great at it, but we had a ton of fun, and it reminded me that, often friends that I have that are not outdoorsy say, "Oh, Grant, you must be so good, like, if the apocalypse ever comes, I wanna go with you, you're gonna survive." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I spend a lot of time outdoors, but I pack all my calories in my bear can and,
Yeah.
really, really specialized equipment." I don't know if I'm all that great when it comes to, like, rugged wilderness survival.
Yeah. That's good. I think that's a great point. Like, really, some people, and I'm included in that. Of I could probably get by a little bit, but all my friends think I'm the most outdoor person. I'm like, listen, I've got a really nice ultralight
Nah.
tents and bags and quilts and stuff like that. I'm bouging it out in the wilderness,
Yep.
just lighter than most. That's all. So, well, awesome, Grant. Thank you again so much for being on, and everybody, thank you so much for listening. We can't wait for the next episode, and I can't wait to use my Bearvault uh, BV1 on the trail and Ixnay, the other stuff for my next trip. So, Grant, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you in person.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, bye.